Democratic Congresswoman Karen Bass has pulled slightly ahead with the latest batch of votes counted. Bass had been trailing slightly behind her competitor, Rick Caruso, a billionaire real estate developer. However, many more votes to be counted and the race might not be called for days or weeks. In Orange County, California, incumbent Republican Young Kim has defeated a Democratic challenger and secured her second term. Kim was one of the first Korean-American women elected to Congress. Some Republican senators have called for a delay in the party's leadership election scheduled to take place next week. Senators Ron Johnson, Rick Scott have called for a delay in the Senate GOP leadership vote next week. Marco Rubio and Josh Hawley also have supported the calls for the vote to be postponed. The closely watched Colorado congressional race between far-right Congresswoman Lauren Boebert and the Democratic challenger Adam Frisch might lead to a recount. The AP has a helpful explainer on why it's taking days for winners to be declared in Arizona, where the AP has not yet made calls in the crucial governor and Senate races. Almost all of Arizona's vote happens by mail, and counting all of those ballots can take a while, particularly in a county as large as Maricopa. CBS News has more reporting showing that Trump is not taking the loss of several of his hand-picked Republican candidates in Tuesday's midterms particularly well. Spoke to several longtime friends, donors and aides in the past 24 hours. Many say he's listening to very few people isolated and mean-spirited about his potential rivals. The 2022 midterm election delivered surprising results, with Democrats maintaining more House seats than projected and a Republican, red wave, failing to materialize. While last figures are still pouring in, it is estimated that 27 of young voters aged 18 to 29 cast a ballot in 2022, making this the midterm election with the second highest youth voter turnout in almost 3 decades after 2018. Sen. Rick Scott, the head of the campaign arm to elect GOP senators on Friday, called the 2022 midterm election results a complete disappointment for the Republican Party. The Florida lawmaker told Fox News host Sean Hannity that GOP voters simply did not turn out in sufficient numbers on Election Day to counteract Democratic voters across the country. Republican Sens Ron Johnson of Wisconsin and Mike Lee of Utah issued a letter this week asking for colleagues to delay a Senate GOP leadership vote on Wednesday. Majority control of the House is still up in the air days after the election, a scenario which was highly unlikely even a week ago. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell of Kentucky has led the GOP caucus since 2007. Florida Rep. Matt Gaetz on Thursday evening tweeted a mocking comment about 3 top GOP congressional leaders, dubbing them a McFailure in a play on their last names. The Florida representative has excoriated McCarthy before describing the House Minority Leader as weak and not worthy of being a leader, while highlighting his loyalty to Trump. Neither party looks likely to gain a significant majority following the midterm elections. Federal courts will likely have the final say on whether student loan relief goes through. There are at least 6 major conservative lawsuits that have arisen so far seeking to block student loan forgiveness. A federal judge in Texas, appointed by former President Donald Trump, struck down the debt relief and ruled it illegal on Thursday evening. The Education Department is appealing the Texas ruling that struck down the debt relief, which is heading to the conservative Fifth Circuit, and the Eighth Circuit will either decide to dismiss the GOP LED lawsuit or continue pausing the student debt relief program. The department has not commented on another potential extension of the student loan payment pause. An October analysis by the USA Today network profiled election-denying candidates on the November ballot in 7 swing states won by President Joe Biden in 2020. The analysis focused on candidates vying for governor, U.S. House, U.S. Senate, Secretary of State and Attorney General because of the influence they could have over future elections. The 2022 midterm election delivered surprising results, with Democrats maintaining more House seats than projected and a Republican, red wave, failing to materialize as the forces driving these come into focus. It is estimated that 27 of young voters aged 18-29 cast a ballot in 2022, making it the second highest youth voter turnout in almost 3 decades after 2018. In some key battleground states, turnout was even higher at 31, and support for Democratic candidates was roughly over 60, driven in large part by the fight for abortion rights after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. There was a barrage of images on social media of lengthy lines formed at university polling sites. Some students waited for 6 hours to vote, casting their ballot at 2 a.m. Michigan allows for same-day voter registration, which is popular with young voters. Christina Samuel, 21, is the president of her school's chapter of Move, Mobilize, Organize, Vote, Empower, the nonpartisan and nonprofit organization aimed at increasing voter turnout among young Texans. Samuel and her organization consulted election lawyers and invoked the Texas election code to make their case to county commissioners for an on-campus early voting location. Democratic politicians offer their gratitude to the youth for showing up in such large numbers this election season. President Joe Biden and Senator Bernie Sanders thanked young voters on Twitter and asked them to remain politically engaged. The Senate race remained far less certain, with counting continuing in key races in Arizona and Nevada. Some trends from the tally have boosted Democrats' hopes of winning both races and thus attaining a 50-seat majority in the 100-seat chamber, where the vice president, in this case Democrat Kamala Harris, breaks ties.